Yeah, I apologize for this talk. I threw it together this morning, and I'm a little fuzzy because this has been a particularly onerous year. We had a lot of problems through the year that we worked through to get to this point. So if you can start on number 1 there, I can show you what Stellafane looks like before the crowds get here. Now, this isn't the gate. It's up by where our security people are, and you can see the snow level. Within a couple of days of that, the gate was covered, so that was the only image I got. And I thought that would be a good way to show what it looks like. Next slide. We're going to move through these pretty... Oh, we got a pointer. Wow. Yeah.
John, there's no full start.
I guess I should have made a PowerPoint.
All right, I'll advance it for you, John.
Okay, so the little, what we call the fruit stand, actually spends most of the year sitting next to the McGregor. And you can see what the snow load looks like in the back there. There's been times when the McGregor here, the actual snow off the roof touches the ground snow. And that's not an unusual year. Next slide. Now this is the ash dome, and you can still see part of the door. During the heaviest point of the year, the snow actually got above the top of the door. Next slide. You're going to see these pictures again, but in a little different perspective. This is looking up the hill from the bunkhouse. This year is the first year we actually kept the entrance into the pavilion open. So one of my things to do was to actually keep entry down here all year long, and that was a fairly major feat. Next slide. This is what the snowbanks look like. This is my all-wheel drive Subaru that I generally use in the winter. And when you're driving up through, you really can't see over the snowbank. Next slide. Now, this here it's hard to tell. It wasn't a good picture. But that smokestack actually is the stove that's out there that we use to heat this area, because some mornings when I got up here it was 10 below zero or more inside where we're sitting right now. And it's kind of hard to work. The fingers really start freezing up and stuff. So I figured this out, and of course immediately the snow from the roof unloaded and filled where the stove was. I had to dig down to find the stove one morning. Next slide. So this is what it looks like. It looks really crude. Next year we're going to have a more efficient design. But we had a new purchase that we actually got last year, sitting right in the middle here where all you folks are now. We bought a sawmill because every year we have a lot of damage that happens to the trees up here through different reasons, and we have to take the tree down to make it safe. So generally we're pushing these trees, just pushing them off to the side, and not getting any value out of it because pine isn't really a good stove wood. Next slide. So this is one of the winter projects, is this right over here. Now all these pieces of wood actually came from the site here. They were damaged trees that were taken out, for safety. So we are now sitting in this really high level of material that we can use to continue our process of making this site usable. Which is one of the reasons, of course, we got the sawmill, because anyone that's been to Home Depot knows how expensive wood has gotten lately. Next slide. Now this is the sawmill sitting here, and it was right about there. And so all winter long I was using the tractor. It's got forks on it. That particular board there is about 12 inches wide, 12 inches square. And it's being cut up into smaller pieces. It was kind of a difficult to get all the sawdust out of here, but we managed to do that. Next slide. Now this is the feedstock. We had a whole bunch of logs. The logs were all stacked up there, so all winter long I was cutting logs, and then I'd take them over and I'd measure and I'd put them onto the actual facility over there. Next slide. But in February, we got a really bad ice storm. Some of the people, like in the Worcester area, know what it's like. They had a bad one a few years back. This is the road up to the Pink Clubhouse. Now, bear in mind, this picture was taken 4 days after the storm because that was the first time I could get here. There were so many trees down across the road, and even though there's 3 different ways you can get up here, not one of them was clear, and it took 4 days. Now, at the Martin homestead, we didn't have power for 5 days. So luckily, we coasted along on generators and things. But you can see some of the damage. This red thing here is the gate that's usually swung out. And it just was amazing. There was limbs and stuff everywhere. Next slide. Now this is looking down over the hill where the ash dome is. You can see with the trees, they're all bent over. It was just an incredible scene at 7 o'clock in the morning when the sun was just coming up. Next slide. And getting further down the hill, you get a look. In the center is the bunkhouse. The great big tree there is the mulberry tree and the walnut tree. Unfortunately, you only see one stem left on the walnut tree because the 3 stems that were there, 2 of them actually came down. Next slide. So this is the mulberry tree, which is right there now. The porta potties are under it and stuff. But there was actually limbs on it laying in the road and stuff, and it was hard to get by. It really made a mess of everything, and particularly in the pine trees we've got over most of the property.
John, that's all sheet ice down there, too.
Yeah, and they're actually on the ground. There was about an inch of ice on everything. So it was just difficult really doing it. And this is 4 days after the storm. This is not the day of the storm. This is how much was still left. Next slide. Now, this is our sawmill where it's sitting right now, because obviously it wouldn't be very good to have it here. It'd be tough to look around when we're showing movies and stuff. We built this little shed, and this is sitting down in Equipment Alley. This is the way the mill is sitting as it right now. And that's a log that we cut during pre-convention. Sitting here, we actually milled up some wood. Next slide. You can see this is the business end of it. And with that, we will continue to build. The hope is now that we'll be able to make a seating area for Louis up here, so that when we sit, they will have a comfortable situation, not a tent, that will be similar to this building and stuff. And because we're really only paying for fasteners and stuff, it's going to be a relatively inexpensive operation compared to what we've done in the past. Next slide. Now this is in Tut Hill Towers. This is actually a solar kiln that we use to treat the wood with, where we dry it out before we use it. We've got some really interesting wood up here for telescope making. We have apple wood, we have some walnut, we have some red oak, we have birch. We have all the types of wood that are very difficult to find and are very expensive that were actually grown here. Next slide. So this is looking in. These are actually boards of trees that were cut down during pre-convention, and we're drying them up. In a couple of weeks, the boards will be cured enough that we'll be able to continue on. We had to stop because I really ran out of wood that was seasoned and stuff on this building here. Next slide. And this here is the railing that goes around the catchment basin we have outside. It had that orange, ugly screen on it for many years. And those were actually sawed up, had pre-con, and installed. So with the functionality of the new sawmill, we can serve you much better and really continue to produce facilities that will be much more comfortable in inclement weather such as we have tonight. And I think that's the last one. Well, okay, that's just some more boards that we've got up there. I must have got them out of order. Thank you very much.